Now I want to bring in Todd Gitlin, Columbia University professor and author of The 60s Years of Hope, Days of Rage. Also senior political commentator Carl Bernstein and nationally syndicated talk show host Dennis Prager. Good evening. Thank you all for joining us. Carl, you first. Exxon CEO Rex Tillerson getting the nod for Secretary of State. He's very close to Vladimir Putin. Is that a good idea?
It depends on how he performs and what he tells the Senate at his confirmation hearings. There's going to be a lot of problems raised because of the role of the oil companies in terms of carbon emissions, in terms of EPA policies, and then there's also this whole question of the Russians. The Russians are looming large and larger over the Trump presidency, and there are basic questions that need to be answered, especially about perhaps Donald Trump's conflicts of interest in Russia. Does Donald Trump have a lot of loans through his various businesses in Russian hands? His son, Donald Trump Jr., has been kind of Trump's personal ambassador to Russia. This needs to be looked at. I think one of the things that we're really learning here is Trump is controlling this process of forming his new administration brilliantly with no interest whatsoever in showing us a really open, truthful picture of what he is up to. And that's really our job in the press, to develop a story that has to do with the real truth of what's going on here.
Dennis Prager, what do you think of that?
I didn't quite understand the last comment. I understood the previous ones. I don't understand what a truthful, open process of appointing your cabinet means. He has told the country who he's considering.
Yeah.
Well, transparency, what is that? I don't quite understand what that means. When you pick your cabinet, you pick your cabinet. He has told the people who he's considered. We know everybody, or just about everyone, I assume, that he's met with. So I don't see that as an issue. As for Russia, I would just ask Professor Gitlin, and I mean this quite openly, did it disturb you when the Obama administration did essentially nothing when Russia invaded and annexed part of Ukraine called Crimea? The damage that Russia has done already is significant, and the left has been utterly silent. Now, when there's no damage done that we can show, we can only anticipate, the left is almost hysterical about Russia's influence on Donald Trump.
Yeah. If you're asking me, I'm not the left myself.
But Professor Gitlin, before you respond to that, I want to get your assessment. What do you make of Rex Tillerson and to Carl's response as well?
I think this is a man who has one value that he's demonstrated in public life, which is the acquisition of reserves to pump more fossil fuel remnants into the atmosphere to make life increasingly uninhabitable, to make the earth increasingly uninhabitable. I see him as yet another pick by Trump who likes people like himself. Big talkers, powerful, no other values that distract from anything but power. That's who he's comfortable with. They're replicas of himself. And I hope that the media, instead of just covering the news, meaning just reporting what his people are saying, I'd like to know how anybody knows that he had a sincere conversation with Mitt Romney. But I would like to see some excavation here, and I don't mean of oil. I mean of an enormous corporation of which Tillerson has been chief, which has immense, complex business dealings, not only with Russia, but with dozens of other countries. It's a private government of its own. And will we actually see some information about Tillerson's practices, about how he is? He's obviously not a diplomat. He's obviously not anything but a deal maker toward the end of increasing the payoff to ExxonMobil stockholders. Okay. Are we going to get a serious look at the man?
Yeah. There's too much talk here about left and right. It seems to me that both in terms of what happened in Crimea and the horrible rape of the Ukraine by Russia, there are plenty of people on left and right who condemned it. That to look at this new presidency just in terms of right and left is a great mistake. That what we really need here, I think, is a kind of unified attempt particularly by the press, the mainstream press, the left press, the right conservative press, to try and learn as much as we can about these people, about Donald Trump, and what this new presidency is. How is this new Secretary of State going to deal with somebody like Mike Flynn, who clearly is not qualified to be the national security advisor to the President of the United States?
Yeah. Well, that's why I moved on, because we're sticking with this administration. The other administration is over now pretty soon. So, Dennis, I do have to ask you that. Dennis, I do want to move on and talk about Trump canceling the press conference scheduled this week for this week. The first one since July. Is he dodging the press because he doesn't want to answer many of these questions, especially about conflicts of interest in his business?
I don't know why he's canceled it. I unlike my colleagues on this panel, I can't tell the future as well as they can. They know how these people will interrelate, what they will do much better than I do. All I can say is he canceled it. I don't know why he canceled it. Maybe he feels he has nothing to gain, just as Hillary Clinton felt she had nothing to gain by having a press conference.
Mm-hmm.
I also have no idea why he canceled it. I'm not terribly worried about the cancellation of a press conference. I think we can make too much of that. What we need to know is what are the conflicts of interest, and is there any reason whatsoever that he should not divest himself totally? The whole idea that his family is going to continue to control these interests while he's president of the United States, I don't think that the country had this idea that he was going to be the president of the United States and the Trump Enterprises was going to continue to go on.
Let me just say, in this regard, there was an extremely thoughtful article today, which really wasn't left-right in this instance, so you'd appreciate it. The Wall Street Journal had some prominent lawyer describe how there is no perfect solution to the problem of Trump Enterprises, because if he needs to divest of it all in some IPO, let's say, then you have the Security and Exchange Commission, where you have Trump, that is, being the person who appoints the commissioners. So there's literally nothing that could be done except an honest administration, which I anticipate in this regard. I don't think he is going to wake up every day and worry about what is happening to Trump
Dennis,
Enterprise.
I thought you weren't into the future.
Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
Yes, I'm not.
Go on, Todd. I wanted you to wait.
I'm merely saying there's no way to know.
Dennis, let him speak. Let him speak.
It would have been nice if our journalism had explored the problem of Trump as administrator of a vast business empire. At the same time, he was running for president of the United States. Why did we have to wait until last month?
I got to tell you this, Todd. We did that a number of times on this show and got called partisan, and Carl Bernstein was part of that conversation. But go ahead, Todd.
If I had a hat, I'd tip it. But it was not very prominent. Certainly was not very prominent in the hometown newspaper, the New York Times, I have to say.
The Washington Post did an awful lot of terrific reporting on this subject, but the whole question of Trump's children are an extension of Donald Trump. And the idea that they are going to sort of impartially conduct this business without regard to the profits that can be generated by the policies of their father's government is absurd. It needs to be divested.
So what do you suggest? Seriously, I'm curious.
I read that Wall Street Journal piece, and I thought it was a first-rate piece. It seems to me some kind of total divestiture of his holdings and out of the family. Cash out.
We know that Mr. Trump has not been generous as a contributor, as a philanthropist. So perhaps this is the time for him to pivot and give it all away.
Hey, Todd, let me ask you this.
Todd, you haven't had his work?
Todd, you haven't had as much time to speak, because I got to get on to other things. So, Todd, Donald Trump already got a lot of good press when he tweeted almost 2 weeks ago that he was going to leave his, quote, great business in total to focus on running the country. Is the perception more important than the reality, or is he going to have, instead of having that press conference, he said, you know what, I've just tweeted it out, I can give the information, instead of having the press conference where it may seem real?
I think it's evident that Trump thinks he can speak over the heads of the mob, the adoring mob, and go directly to his people. And his people don't care what's on CNN. His people don't care what's in the New York Times or the Washington Post. He believes that he can lock in, kind of mind meld, and that any institution that presumes to count, that is not in his field of magnetism, can be discarded. It's part of the waste of America that is to be dismantled because it's in the way of his project, which has to do with wealth and power, period.